There we go. Okay. Hello, welcome. Hello. It's time for Blocktalk. We're on Bitcoin block 464888. Yeah, it's going pretty good. You know, mempool hitting the ceiling there, but we'll see. With all this volatility in Bitcoin, people are trying to send them, and they got to put some good fees on it. So we'll see. This backlog should get cleared soon enough. I don't know. Bitcoin's expensive. That's why we have other options. Let's see. Our sponsor for the show today is the Legend. No, it's not the Legend Room. It's Bittrex. But they're doing lots of cool crowd sales like the Legend Room, Apex Ventures, and they have a really great market for Decred, which doesn't look like it's on the first page here. Jeez, are you guys trading this all on Polo? What the hell is wrong with you?
Not on the first page today.
Okay. Guess we need some new developments, but no, Bittrex is a really great platform, very reputable. You know, they're part of the security task force that was at Microsoft and Amazon. So like these guys are the top of the top. They're leading the pledge in terms of security in the internet. Let's see, and GPU source. You know, if you want to mine Decred or Ethereum or Ubiq or any of these other currencies that require a GPU, do your bulk ordering and your turnkey solutions through GPU source. You know, you can subscribe to updates. These guys are getting busier, but they are developing some good products, and they are getting some really good support out there for their customers. So check them out today. If you're lucky enough to get an update, be sure to follow through on it. And finally, we have the live chat going here. So if you guys have any questions, I'll do what I can to read them, but we got a pretty full house here because as we covered on the last show, I'm live in Vancouver. Hello. Woo! Yeah. So one less screen here, and we got the live audience here, so we'll have lots of good questions. And I know we had them late coming to the show last time Decred was on, so we really got to cover some bases again with Jake. We'll try not to repost too much stuff, but we definitely got to make sure the room is up. Knows where you're coming from, Jake. So maybe tell us, even before you got into crypto, what's kind of like your background?
Oh, so I took a stab at doing a secure, a secure backup solution back like between 2010 and 2013 called CipherTight. It took a pile of money and a bunch of time for me to understand that no one really cares about secure backups and that it was a race to the bottom backed by venture capital money. So I bowed out of that after a while once I saw Bitcoin and I became sufficiently interested in it.
I think once we all come into Bitcoin, we become sufficiently interested. So you actually developed some really good software for Bitcoin, known as BTC Suite, which is the Golang implementation of Bitcoin. So can you talk briefly just about that?
Sure. So BTC Suite is basically a full, it's an alternative full node implementation of Bitcoin, coded from the ground up in Golang. And it was done in response to dissatisfaction with the sort of development monoculture built around Bitcoin Core as I experienced it in late 2012 and early 2013.
Okay, so what percentage of clients are the network that you think is running your clients?
I think it's a pretty small percentage. But one thing to keep in mind is that the extent to which these percentages can be assessed depends on things like, does your firewall have port 8333 open? And only then, if you have your firewall port open and you're running BTCD, will it show up in the statistics? Along with the fact that there are a lot of corporate nodes that aren't necessarily exposed to the internet beyond the individual ones. So we've seen more adoption of BTC Suite, BTCD, and BTC Wallet by other corporate entities more so than individuals running their own nodes. As an example there was recently a Litecoin implementation made, LTCD, and the Lightning Incorporated people built on top of BTC Suite to make LND, the Lightning Network Daemon. So those are just a couple examples. If I'm not mistaken, say Factom is built on top of it. So there's a bunch of people who are using the code, but they're not screaming from the rooftops that we use BTC Suite. It's sort of just a matter of fact, and they use it and it gets their work done and it's free, right?
So you're definitely not getting the credit I think you deserve.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I'm not really all about hoarding the credit as much as I know that that's like a game in the open source community, big time. I did it because I cared about the network. I thought, I thought, and I still think, Bitcoin is great technology, but as we've sort of seen in the context of governance, it's got some pretty serious shortcomings too.
Yes, and that is a great segue into our next topic, which also brings on to the team Daniel. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, not a problem. Always good to network with other community managers. It makes our jobs a lot easier. But yeah, so you, I guess, got frustrated, Jake, with the overall aspect of Bitcoin, I guess, and then you decided to fork your own code base and launch your own network. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah. There were, I was having a number of conversations with, with a number of people about potential altcoin projects, and I took my time. I looked at a bunch of them, and I saw some that I like, and some that I liked, and some that I didn't like. And when I found the content, sort of theoretically that I liked, I and a handful of other people, got to work coding it and doing bring up, and it started like in Q1 or Q2 of 2014.
And I found the launch was really unique. Like, I had a friend recommend it. It's like, hey, sign up for this mailing list, or sign up to this because they're doing an airdrop, and that is a very uncommon distribution method in the space. Like, normally there's an ICO or there's a fair launch mining, but not many people can do an airdrop and support the marketplace because it is not a cheap endeavor, I guess. And it was one of the most successful in terms of profit or I guess return for an airdrop. Like, do you have any comments, I guess, on that distribution model, and if you would do it again?
Can you define what you mean by an airdrop?
Oh yes, that would be a good way to stop. Like, define the airdrop, I guess.
Okay, so the airdrop was the answer to the question, what is the way to get Decred into circulation without getting right on the line that is defined by the U.S. regulatory body, the SEC, which is they regulate securities offerings. So if you are offering tokens of some kind in exchange for value, it's very difficult for you to argue that it's not a security. Despite this, ICOs have basically gone essentially unmolested by the SEC. Despite the fact that I think that most of them basically are either on or over the line in terms of whether the coin constitutes a security or not. So that was really what drove the airdrop, which is that I didn't want to basically take value in exchange for these tokens. I just wanted to give them away, so that they would get into circulation without me sort of, triggering parts of SEC regulations that could, basically securities law that could lead to me being prosecuted later, which, as I'm sure you can understand, as a U.S. citizen, happens on the regular to lots of people. So I just wanted to sidestep that if at all possible. So we took half of the funds, and we split those up internally amongst, Company Zero, the company that paid for the development, and the developers who contributed to that development. Some of them had sweat equity. Some of them actually paid in to get their buy-in there. And then the other half was given away in an airdrop, where basically we had people sign up on a list, and then we tried to basically shake the list out to remove fraudulent entries, and then we gave away half of the initial pre-mine, so that we could get it into circulation, and so we could avoid the usual securities laws.
Yeah, well, we're calling from Canada, so we're very fortunate that we have a much more, I guess, lax government, and gives us a pretty big sandbox to play in. But we were at a regulation event yesterday, and there are a lot of lawyers and people from the regulatory space in America. They're very lame, very lame. They're not allowed to do a lot within the U.S. border, and we were shaking our heads a couple times, but it was still very informative, and they do want to allow for certain amount of innovation, but they're definitely putting regulation, I think, before innovation in a lot of ways. So like, I guess what has been your experience with the regulation and like, having a lawyer, like, and have you had a call from the SEC or anything?
No, we haven't had any issues. Basically, the way I think that it's best to operate is it's best to operate in a way that you're not the tip of the spear in terms of what's going on in a given marketplace. That is, if you look at the way a number of these other altcoins have operated in terms of crowd sales / ICOs, it puts them in a pretty exposed position because they're taking millions of dollars, or it's equivalent in Bitcoin, and then going, I swear I won't, spend this on hookers and blow or whatever the expenditure happens to be. And that's like a big red flag. People have been doing this, on and off for the past several decades in the United States. That is, people go, oh, I'm going to start a new company and it's going to sell shoes and I need $20 million. And then the $20 million shows up and then, the person disappears with, like it's, oh, I spent it all on a yacht in the Caribbean or something, and so people are just, the regulations exist for a reason. And part of that reason is that Americans tend to really bend the rules. So.
Yeah. And a big part of the show yesterday was, cannabis was a big part of it. And I think there's a lot in common where it's like the industry is going to exist regardless if it's regulated or unregulated. But in order for cryptocurrencies to move from $1 billion industry to $1 trillion industry, the same with cannabis, it needs to have regulators on board. It needs to be able to onboard services easily. And part of that is, not, falling within regulations, but, working with them to kind of adapt and understand what the new regulations need to be.
Yeah, I guess I did have an experience, which is that there was a payment processor I tried to set up a while ago, and what ended up happening was, the payment processor, the FinCEN changes the rules with its ruling letters. It basically can go, we think that this passage of text, which reads in plain English one way, we really think that this means something else. So basically, when you're in this space, if you're operating any of these, payment processor of any kind, you have to be constantly watching for these FinCEN letters because they can rewrite the rules with these, administrative rulings. So, my experience with it is that anything where you take custody of funds, they are very twitchy about, understandably, per my example about starting the shoe company, right? You're going to start the shoe company, take custody of all these funds, and then you're irresponsible with the funds. And they just want to prevent that. So basically what I learned from that experience was I want to try to avoid taking custody of other people's funds because it comes with many, many strings attached in what in most cases are pretty good reasons.
Well, and Decred's been very successful. So like you have the added benefit of no one's really lost a lot of money. I mean, like Company Zero maybe, but overall you guys are doing pretty well as a currency. Like you rocketed into the top 10, and no small thanks to Daniel for that. He's done great work in terms of publicity and also managing the community and making sure everyone's having a good time and a good user experience with regards to the platform, the currency, and the community. I gotta say you guys are kicking ass, and I'm a proud holder, full disclosure, of your coin. So if I come off very nice to you, it's definitely because I'm a little bit biased for this show. But overall, like what do you guys see as like the future of Decred in terms of like this model you guys have proven? Well, maybe we should frame this conversation as explain why Decred is innovative.
Maybe you'd like to say something, Daniel?
Sure. I think Decred's innovative because we have the ability to continue to move forward regardless of what's going on. And, by empowering the holders of Decred, it's actually created this kind of environment where it's very conducive for evolution. It's very conducive to progress. And with the community having power like this, we can really take Decred in whatever direction we want to. And we've seen this time and time again where a project comes along, and if you've been in the blockchain space for a long time, you've seen this, and they've got some new revolutionary technology, right? And then somebody comes behind them, and guess what? They have the same technology because it's open source, and but actually theirs is a little better. So their project is now going to overtake yours. So with Decred, it kind of gives us the ability to pivot. It gives us the ability to continue forward, kind of no matter what's going on. And oh man, you guys are making me want a beer. Everybody's got one.
It's time to beer up.
Yeah, for real.
I think you got a lot of it with the pivoting, in the sense that, a lot of other currencies are very much feature focused. They focus on one or two features. And, what we're trying to focus on is we're trying to focus on a layer deeper, which is that, like if you read the original Bitcoin white paper, there's the focus on the idea of one CPU, one vote, right? And what we tried to do is we tried to go, well, that's an awesome idea that got us really quite far. We basically were able to throw out the people who maintain the centralized ledger. So we were able to disintermediate banking with that. So we figure, okay, let's keep the ball rolling and go, and we can ask the question, well, now that system's up and running, what isn't working? And once we've identified, the major problem being governance, what we can do by adding governance is we can essentially hot swap pieces on the engine of the cryptocurrency, so that we go, oh, we don't like the way our privacy is running. Well, guess what? We'll hard fork it, and it will be a community, there is a community consensus about whether we should hard fork or not. So basically, it's an engine that runs, and then we go, oh, this part of the engine's not working right. We can build that piece, pivot, and then, keep moving.
And like one of the things I think is innovative, and there's a lot of different mentality or projects in the space, like doing proof of reserve or proof of whatever, and the main one being that you guys have is proof of activity, which is not necessarily proof of stake, because it doesn't really, I guess, contribute to the security in a direct way, but it's definitely done in a unique way that it contributes to the governance, which in a roundabout way does the security. So maybe can you explain what proof of activity is for people who are unfamiliar?
Proof of activity, defined in the paper that was written by, Lee Mizrahi, I can't remember the other co-authors, but by Charlie Lee and his other academic co-authors. The upshot of proof of activity is this idea that each block, in addition to doing proof of stake, which has its own stabilizing influence by sort of occupying idle coins, there is this idea that every block has signatures on it from people who hold the currency. And proof of activity basically says we do an FTS prescription, which is follow the Satoshi. So you follow, of the issued coins, you follow 5 random Satoshis. Then whoever controls those Satoshis can then vote to validate that block. Now, that said, proof of activity and the proposal for the hybrid proof of work, proof of stake system in Decred were concurrently developed. So the proof of activity paper is from 2014, whereas the original proposal for the hybrid proof of work, proof of stake model we ended up using in Decred from Memcoin 2 was started in mid 2013. So basically, these two things were developed concurrently and effectively are similar, but proof of activity defined in the paper uses follow the Satoshi, whereas our hybrid proof of work, proof of stake is an opt-in system where you have to basically go, I have the coins, let me buy tickets. Then your tickets are episodically selected, similar to the follow the Satoshi's prescription, just that you have to opt in, as opposed to going like, oh, I get to vote on a block just because you hold coins. You actually have to do something with the coins.
And there's still definitely a large priority in terms of the security based on proof of work. Like you guys used a rather uncommon algorithm, Blake, which I guess is far more efficient than SHA-256, at least in terms of energy used. But can you, I guess, outline what is, I guess, Blake 256 and why you chose to use that for the proof of work side?
Yeah, Blake 256 is if I'm not mistaken, it was one of the SHA-3 candidates. And the reason we ended up choosing Blake 256 is here's what we figure. We figure that any algorithm, unless you make it a memory hard one that sort of scales, with the that scales its various parameters of the memory hardness, you're going to end up in the same situation no matter what non-memory hard hashing algorithm you end up going with, which is that over time, eventually someone will create ASICs, and then the ASICs will basically be the the means by which people mine. The reason we chose Blake 256 is basically that we asked the question, what hashing algorithms besides SHA-256 or double SHA-256, excuse me, do we feel comfortable using here? Because basically we wanted a hashing algorithm that wouldn't just allow Bitcoin miners to go, oh, look, Decred, and then flip on all their Bitcoin mining rigs and just like mine all the Decred. So we figured we'd pick something that, you can spin up on a GPU. It's relatively fast. It's relatively energy efficient. It's not too complicated. And, that's how we sort of landed on Blake 256.
Yeah, and I remember first hearing about Blake and the potential, like in terms of like merge mining and stuff, from a very well-known character back in 2014. I'm sure Daniel knows exactly who I'm talking about in terms of who that is.
The Dragon.
Man, well, yeah, he was the actual creator.
But are you talking about Bryce Weiner?
Yeah, he spun out a lot of things on it, and he was talking like, every toaster is going to use a Blake ASIC, and like it's the future of proof of work. And I'm sure like there's some truth to what he was saying, but like his reasoning for saying it was completely off base, and why he's no longer a welcome member of many communities. But overall, I think like Blake definitely has some potential, and I think there is a lot to do with like merge mining and in terms of efficiency of like what you're actually doing, which is burning electricity. But I'm really excited for seeing ASICs show up. So we asked about this on the last show. Have you guys seen any ASICs or any kind of flavor of like purpose-built hardware for Decred yet?
I've seen or heard reports of a few people using FPGAs, but just due to the cost of development for ASIC technology, I would highly doubt that anybody has developed Decred ASICs at this point in time.
So you used a nice acronym there. Do you think you can break it down?
What do you mean?
The FPGAs.
FPGA is kind of like a programmable board that you can program to perform a specific task like a hashing function very efficiently. So, there's really only big nerds and like hardware engineers have these things. And we're not really talking about a gigantic, hashing power advantage. I mean, if you look at a modern Polaris-based GPU, I mean, you get really good hash rate and energy efficiency on Blake 256, 14 rounds like Decred has. But it's more of a kind of, it'll give you an energy efficiency advantage. Like you might be hashing 1 gigahash for 35 or 40 watts, as opposed to, on a 1070 GTX, I think you can get maybe 2 or 3 gigahash per second for 100. So I mean, it's not even with modern 14 nanometer GPU technology, it's not even that huge of an advantage, but an ASIC would be one day when they are developed.
Yeah, I mean, FPGAs, what is it? Field programmable gate arrays are typically used in hardware bring up. Like if you're going to say, oh, I want to have a special system on a chip board brought up for application X, what you might do is you might you might simulate it in an FPGA, and then you do the work there and you go, okay, now it's working, and then you go through the whole dance to get the custom hardware made. So basically it's sort of the stepping stone to custom hardware for a lot of applications.
Yeah, and I should have sent an invite up to Wolf, who's one of like the most interesting characters I think I've met in the past month in terms of like people developing stuff. He's working with miners, like he's developing his own mining software. And like when you're having these new algorithms show up, like Zcash or Ethereum, and is on new graphics card, they're finding like whole percentage point of efficiencies, and those are massive. Like when you're talking about the scale of the network, like you can get a serious advantage over the competition. And it's very cool to see them just like, oh man, like I found I can modify the voltage on this card, and I can get like an extra 20 watts of efficiency. Like, yeah, that sounds cool.
I actually believe that it was Wolf that was running the FPGA for Decred.
That's
He's
correct.
definitely been a regular, in our Slack channel at times. And he is a cool guy. He's an interesting character, but definitely a very intelligent person.
Yes, yeah, and so one of the happy accidents I guess Decred had with being like a low memory requirement in terms of hashing is it can be dual mine. So like there's a portion of the work a GPU is capable of doing. It can then fill that in with Decred. So you're able to mine 2 coins at once and get the maximum potential out of your coin. And yeah, there's a lot of people now looking to even boost that efficiency. So like they're finding like excess bandwidth on this hardware, and they're able to really get the maximum efficiency out of it. I'm curious how this will develop further with new algorithms and also with things like machine learning, AIs. Like I asked Wolf if he was considering any of that while he was programming his. I think he's doing like a universal miner or something, but it's like, oh no, I haven't even considered that. It's definitely like way down the pipeline of having standardized work in terms of like machine learning. Like Facebook isn't outsourcing their GPU needs, right? Anyways, I could ramble all night on this, but what are you guys getting out now? Because I hear about like weekly developments from Decred. So what was the most recent one, and what's happening maybe the next week that you can hint at?
I wouldn't say anything necessarily on the development side, although we are working on a it's a page to monitor the voting status, which is really going to be cool for anybody that was around during the version 0.8 upgrade. You would have seen this kind of hard fork voting demo page that kind of had some nice infographics, and it allowed you to see the status of the blocks coming in, what version the blocks were, what version POS was on, as well as POW. And this new web page is going to be able to kind of show people in a very user-friendly way, where are we with this whole voting thing? Because the whole point of Decred is voting, right? And the version 1 upgrade that enables voting on the mainnet just came out. So, now it's like, these guys have just said, hey, we've built this incredible ship. Now it's time for you to drive it. Here's the wheel. Good luck, and we're here to help you and guide you along the way. But in terms of development, it's really the community's call from this point forward. Now we are voting on this go around whether to implement the Lightning Network or not, which I believe is something that'll pass pretty easily. And I understand Lightning Network is a big deal right now. A lot of coins are doing this, but it is a cool thing, and it is going to give Decred a lot of capabilities to not only to scale, but for things like cross-chain atomic swaps when when other coins that have Lightning Network and and Decred interact, which is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on right now. I mean, the big thing that's happened is right after the 1.0 release, and we've made a couple patch releases, especially for our GUI wallets, because users sussed out bugs that we did not catch when we released them. People are now voting, or basically we're slated to, unless something drastic changes, we're slated to start tallying votes for the first 2 mainnet agendas in roughly 10 days. So enough proof of stake miners have upgraded to version 4, the version 1.0, which is referred to as stake version 4 or vote version 4. Over 75% appear to have upgraded. So in very short order, we're going to have stake version 4. And then it appears that enough proof of work miners have upgraded to the latest, post 1.0 consensus daemon that we're going to be seeing version 4 blocks as well prior to this voting period that should start in 10 days. Once that happens, then we'll actually have mainnet votes being cast and tallied for both the ticket price algorithm change and for whether or not the community wants us to do Lightning Network. And what we've actually been seeing, we've been seeing some of these numbers come in because people are setting their vote bits before the tallying begins. What we've seen is almost unanimous support for the ticket price change, but we're seeing about 56% support for the Lightning Network change, which I found kind of surprising because I'd expect more people to want, the Lightning Network. So, it looks like we're probably, in order to, my sense of it is that part of it is that people really don't understand the Lightning Network just because there's been so much FUD back and forth, in the context of Bitcoin and SegWit and so on.
Yeah, it's a very interesting battle in terms of like what features are actually wanted. And like when you're in the space long enough, you start to realize the cycles, like the market cycles over things like a marketplace or anonymity and then anonymity again. Or, even like when Microsoft was allowing people to put instances on Azure, like there was the BAS, blockchain as a service, and the nickname was Bubble as a service. Anyone who integrated it had a nice little tick up in price, and it was nothing. So like it's going to be really interesting seeing what your community actually wants to see work done towards, because it is value that has to be put, sweat labor and everything. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to have a vote in it too. So we have one of, I guess, the harshest altcoin critics in the space in the room here. Taylor, do you have any questions for our lovely guest today?
Sure. First question is, do you have any users? Or is anybody using the system, and why?
Sure.
In what sense? Like users, as a means of payment, or people that are actively participating in
non-speculative
work, or
a non-speculative use case.
Okay.
Well, I think that if we ask the question what any cryptocurrency's use case is that it's used. The base function is that it's a store of value and a means of transmitting that value. So, the fact that people are using exchanges, withdrawing from exchanges, you're using it for transmission right there. And, what's inevitable, if you look at, say, with Bitcoin, how long was Bitcoin in production before anybody used it for anything what most people would, consider useful? It took probably, was it a whole year or more until somebody paid for a pizza with it?
Yeah.
I know that some people get invoices paid in Decred, so it is being used, but it is new. So anything that's new in the cryptocurrency space tends to be more of a speculative acquisition than a sort of a practical acquisition. It's not like people are like, oh, I run my multi-billion-dollar business using this brand new altcoin. It's like people need years of exposure to it before they go, okay, I'm comfortable enough with this and it's stable enough, so now I'm going to start using it to transmit value more so than store value.
And how soon do you think it will be integrated with Company Zero, where it's Company Zero is funded by the network and it's more of it's a contractor for the network rather than the development company?
I think that is going to happen here within I'd say, well, here's the thing. It depends on what you mean, because currently, right, we house most of the developers. In the long run, I don't want that to be the only company doing development work, but we have yet to see anybody else show up and be like, oh, we have 10 people who want to hack on this and we want to get paid to do it. So, when that happens, we can actually, have a discussion as opposed to, creating a monoculture. In the long run, I'm not interested in having Company Zero be the only corporate entity responsible for maintaining the core code.
So is this like a developer incentive, or you are paid by how does that work?
In terms of compensation. Okay, so initially what we did is that we tried to size the pre-mine. We tried to make the pre-mine small so that we're not just, pre-mining 30% of the currency out and then taking half of that or something. So we tried to keep the pre-mine small and then ask the question, what is the smallest pre-mine we can have where we end up with enough incentive and skin in the game to keep developing it in the long term? Well,
it's not continuing.
Okay. Let's see. The scenery change surprised me. Let's see. So the upshot here is that we assign some coins to ourselves because basically in order to bring the network up, it requires, originality, risk, money, development time, and all that kind of stuff. So we figured, we've got some risk premium, so we have to be compensated for taking these risks to bring it up, or else we can't continue sustaining it in the longer term, on a 2, 3, 4, or even 10-year time scale. And then what we did is that because the exchange rates were so low during the first, roughly calendar year we were out, we could not pay basically the dev org could not pay Company Zero enough coins to pay for the dev work. So basically the dev work done during the first calendar year was essentially, it was done pro bono by Company Zero, with basically the understanding being that if I and the developers I work with are to have Decred take on any value, there was a whole bunch more work that needed to be done than what we launched with. So we had to get that done, had to get it out the door, and the coins we got up front were enough to basically balance the risk and the work that it would take to do the ongoing development. And since launch, I've spent about $1 million on the development work that's been put into Decred, and basically in the past, I want to say it's a month and a half, maybe a little bit longer, almost 2 months now, has Decred's value been high enough such that the development organization subsidy could support the development work done by Company Zero. So basically, until 1 or 2 months ago, it wasn't financially possible for the development organization to pay Company Zero for all the dev work it did. So basically, I did that because I knew that without putting that work in, this thing's dead on arrival.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the sweat equity comes in. Like, you can put more than just money into this thing, but at the same point, you are burning money. So Jake, you're clearly very successful in terms of equity. Are you able to share where a lot of your successes come from?
I have an interesting history that I don't want to get into in huge amounts of detail. You guys are in Canada, right?
Yes, yeah.
I'm not allowed in Canada, so.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so I've got, I've done a lot of interesting things that I don't want to get into, and that's where I'll leave it, You
can tell us and Google and everyone watching.
No. Don't worry, Google already knows, and so does the government.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can pull up some public records and ask you about it in private.
Good luck.
But,
already tried.
Sorry?
So we've already tried. This man is non-existent.
This is why he had to pull tape off of his webcam for us.
Yeah.
No, it's an interesting world where you can be guilty of just about anything, right? Like, we heard about the Ross Albert story, and it's still ongoing, and they're still finding more people involved in it. But the thing is, if they want to make someone guilty, it's really easy for them to mold the rules around making an example out of someone. So yeah, you have to, I guess, consider that when you are, working in the global finance industry. But that's why we brought up regulation earlier. But in terms of like building, I guess, a decentralized governance, like we saw with the DAO, like there was a lot of, Slock. It was definitely Slocket's DAO, but they used clever wording to say, this thing is a thing that exists, and hopefully it hires us. I mean, we're actively supporting it, so it really should, pay us and hire us and contract us. But I think that was a flawed mindset from the beginning. Like, the best DAOs are going to be companies that become more DAO-like. So, I mean, like, what is the regulatory view, I guess, of you guys in Company Zero in terms of ownership of the system, and like, how are you becoming like hands-off on it?
We don't own the development organization funds, and basically I act as the interim steward of those funds. To date, they've only been used to pay contractors who perform work for the organization, like designers, developers, documentation writers, marketing people like Daniel. And I think that, in the long run, what we're trying to do is ultimately control of these funds will be decentralized, and we'll put these funds will be controlled by basically minimally complex smart contracts that unlock the, the funds based on the input from stakeholders. So that what we're building right now, basically now that the hard fork voting stuff is out, we're building out a proposal system so that, let's say, Alex or any of you guys have a really good idea and you want to submit it. You submit it, and then You submit it, and then it would be seen by everybody, and then it might get voted on, and it might get approved, and then funds are unlocked as a result of that.
Yeah, and I'd love to, I think the true measure of decentralization will be like when other companies start getting payment for developing on your platform to really and maybe you guys don't even like that company or something, but I imagine you do if they're helping you. One of our developers from my project, he's actively worked on the Decred code base and done commits. So Julian's in the Slack or in the live chat right now asking for Daniel to take his shirt off. And I'm not sure what the context of that conversation is. But
come to consensus.
Exactly. If I could go to New York, I would, but I don't have good friends there, so I mean, it will have to wait for another time. But no, I think it's really cool the collaborations in the space, and it will be interesting to see if our development company could be hired by your network to develop for things other than UBIC. It will be there's definitely that potential. I can see it because the communities are very intertwined, and overall, we all succeed. There's a rising tide coming, and there's a lot of boats that don't have many holes in them, and they should, be rising with Bitcoin or with whatever the leader of the pack is.
I think what a lot of people don't understand, and a lot of people in our Slack at least have expressed, oh, the development work thus far for Decred seems so slow, right? And what is all these other coins have all these fancy, bells and whistles and algorithms and, et cetera, et cetera. What are you guys doing with Decred? And I think, what people that hold Decred like myself and maybe even you already understand is that when this proposal system is developed, we have the ability to vote and fund, a lot of issues simultaneously and, a lot of proposals. So very soon, we could reach a point where the development progress for Decred becomes very rapid, and you could find, within a 2 or 3 month period, an enormous amount of work being done, and an enormous amount of progress being made. So I'm really excited about the proposal system just because, we have this governance model built out now, and it's, when we start using it, that's when, Decred really starts becoming what it was meant to be. So that's actually really soon. And Jake, you said the proposal system is going to take 2 months to build out, 3 months.
Yeah, it depends on how complex we make it, but I feel like because work sort of started on it at this point. I think it's safe enough to describe. It's roughly the idea that all of this information, rather than just going on a website and then you guys trusting us to go yay, it's on a website, that's good enough for me. What we're doing is we're building out some, basically blockchain-based infrastructure that will back the proposal system. If you're familiar with open timestamps, which is, one of these several Peter Todd side projects, it is a system for timestamping data that doesn't involve an app coin like Factum and doesn't involve a paid service I think there's a couple of these services where they charge some nominal amount of money for timestamping. Basically, what we would be doing is we would have a record of all of the proposals that people submit, and we would episodically anchor that into the Decred blockchain. So it would be a time-ordered repository of proposals. Then what we would do is that we would apply filters to them, because proposals are the kind of thing where it's like a suggestion box. If somebody comes by and just writes a bunch of obscenities on on a card and stuffs it in a box, and you put that up on the internet publicly, there's a whole bunch of things you probably don't want appearing on your website that will go in that box. And so to some extent, we do need to screen these proposals that people make. But at the same time, it's the kind of situation where we're not going to censor you just because you have an opinion that's different than us. So we would add a system, something that's sort of a proof of censorship, so that if we censor you, we'll be like, we censored you, and here's your proof. And so that it's if you write a whole string of expletives and racial slurs, here's your proof of censorship. You can show that to anybody, and they'd be like, yeah, I understand why they censored you. As opposed to just oh, we disagree with you, so we're going to censor your standpoint, because then you could go to the public and show them that, and then it's a big ruckus. So that's the rough idea that we have for the proposal system, which is that it would be a system where it's like we can't game it and censor everybody, but we also make it so it's not super simple to just jam stuff in the ballot box. Like we would charge a fee, to deter people from making really stupid proposals and really poorly thought out proposals, or proposals like, oh, I want $20 million so I can get a boat in the Caribbean, like I was joking about in some other interview thing.
Well, like we saw on we heard on the last show with Dan, like Steemit is very much like a blockchain, and then the Steemit website is an application layer or a centralized source on top of it. And if they wanted to, they can censor whatever they want on that site. But now, like we are seeing, well, I haven't checked it out yet, but I'll take Dan's word for it. There are other sites that are linking to the chain and displaying the information. So, like, as long as you're putting that core information in, and even the fact of having just like, oh, we're not going to let everyone make proposals. We're going to put a couple out and let them vote on that as a kind of a test bed, and then expand it a little further, maybe do a high fee, and then anyone can submit a proposal, dial it back again. Okay, the fee is slightly lower. Maybe, oh, that's too low. We're getting too much spam. Well, okay, we'll dial up again. This is all part of the process, right? Like nobody really knows what they're doing. We're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look, I mean, a good comparison is Dash. When Dash released their governance infrastructure, it was big bang. It all came out in one shot, and it was, all the pieces worked together, and they're still working together, and it's doing a pretty good job. But the way we're approaching it is we're engineering this one piece at a time. So, now that we have the hard fork voting, which is basically a referendum infrastructure that's on chain, now we're going to build it backwards and then build a proposal system that feeds into that. And then we'll make sure that there's guardrails on it so people can't just submit spam and cause problems, or, make the project look awful by putting something that really shouldn't be in there. And then we'll finally connect that backwards to the part where the control of the funds is decentralized, so that we tie the three pieces together: the hard fork voting, the proposal system, and then the control of funds.
Well, and the mantra that I think every blockchain company should have, or even any company that handles a significant amount of security, is you should succeed by not failing. So part of that might be, taking very stable steps, looking and being very careful. But if Dash wants to do them all at once and it works, well, that's a success as well. So there's not many comments I can make about that, but I mean, it's what it is. Do you guys got any questions more here in the room?
Yeah, just about the inflation rate. Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay. The inflation rate, isn't it similar to what Bitcoin is, like in terms of the actual curve?
It's actually really different than Bitcoin. Whereas Bitcoin has these halvening events, which are dramatic and lead to, price speculation, and people even claim, market manipulation. And it essentially it creates this situation where the supply is squeezed very rapidly. And with Decred, every 3 weeks, we actually just gradually reduce the amount of rewards being produced by every block. So just like Bitcoin, Decred, there will only be 21 million Decred ever. And unlike Bitcoin, we're going to arrive at that number in a much more smooth fashion than Bitcoin.
That's exactly accurate, which is that, the subsidy reduces every 3 weeks. It reduces by like 1%. And then it's more continuous. There's not going to be price spikes created by these halvening events. And then, it is this, I believe when you integrate it and you average it out, it is the same emission curve as Bitcoin, just with a pre-mine, as opposed to mining from zero and then, a halvening at the 4-year mark.
It's all right. Like you're definitely still in a distribution phase. Like I see on the site here, you're exactly at 1 or 25% mine. And there's a lot that still needs to come out. And like, I guess in terms of like a long-term viable investment, like you guys are playing the long game, right? Like you're talking about 100-year inflation curve, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you push it all out there really fast, then you have to go through like a very heavy inflationary period. The way I approach Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies is Bitcoin got a lot of things right. It got some things wrong, but it got a lot of things right. So I figure why not reuse the parts it got right?
Now, something I've never seen in the space, or maybe someone can point it out to me now, is a proof of work coin with no block reward. So it operates purely on fees. So I don't think there's any example of that in the space because there hasn't been enough transactional volume to sustain anything like that. I know NXT is purely fee-based, but it's proof of stake. So, I mean, it is what it is. But like proof of work has a significant amount of security cost in terms of like physical infrastructure and actual energy being burned. So do you guys know of any model, or like how are you kind of preparing for that eventual future?
Well, I'd say the good news for us is that the Bitcoin will meet that fate far before we will. And, we'll kind of see what happens, as Bitcoin becomes a network supported by fees. So I think just having that knowledge beforehand will give us a significant advantage in, how we prepare for it, by watching their response and, seeing how effective it is, seeing where it can be improved upon, and, et cetera.
Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
I feel like, sort of macroeconomically, I did not want to, and I mean, we all kind of went back and forth within the development group about this, is I really didn't want a tail emission. And the reason I didn't want a tail emission is that if you look at how central banks use, emissions or interest rates, it's a knob that they use to try to sort of, drive macroeconomic policy. Like, oh, the economy's doing bad, turn the interest rate down. Oh, the economy's doing better, turn the interest rate up. Basically, I view the emissions, the tail emissions, as a knob that I would really rather not have on this machine. And if you look at it, what's clear is that when you go into like a fee-only regime, there's a lot of weird economic things that happen. Like you are incentivized to create long fork chains just so you reorg it, and then you can collect the fee. So there's all sorts of strange things that happen when you go to a fee-only model, and that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means no one's figured it out yet. Like, for example, maybe instead of paying fees out on a block-by-block basis, they should be paid out on an average basis across 100 blocks or something, so that you're de-incentivized to game it and then mine go backwards in time and mine a fork chain just so you can collect a bunch of fees. So and another thing that occurs to me about it is that no one has simulated it. Just simulate it, make a fee-only coin, and see what happens. Like what people will start attacking it and breaking it, and then you go, okay, well, let's start over. Let's change rules.
Yeah, I'm waiting for like some altcoin to try it. I'm sure there's been some example and it's failed miserably, but like this is why altcoins exist. They're very much like public testnets for Bitcoin, and they're proving out models like and seeing if problems exist before they actually become real problems. Because like if some $25,000 cap altcoin spontaneously combust because they had a completely failed model, at least we can maybe learn the lesson from that, and maybe it was worth the 25 grand that was destroyed. But overall, yeah, it's just I think it is very much like the altcoin space is an innovation curator for like or incubator for Bitcoin. So do you guys see a lot of changes or a lot of the improvements you're doing being part of Bitcoin one day?
I guess it really depends. Yeah. I mean, these with Bitcoin, and we all love Bitcoin, obviously. That's kind of why we're all here. But, Bitcoin is very slow to move. And they're very slow to kind of adapt to new things. And, I've heard this kind of testnet argument from a lot of different people before about, how, we can test out technology and, maybe Bitcoin will implement it. But, we've seen thus far how much difficulty Bitcoin has implementing anything at all. So I think that, the real question is what function, or what can we prove to Bitcoin about governance and, the need to have governance and, the ability to, I guess, kind of trudge forward with a governance model. And I know Bitcoin has a governance model, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. But it's not effective. It doesn't empower the holders of the currency, or whatever the token, I guess you should call it. But yeah, I mean, it'd be awesome for Bitcoin to adopt Decred's technology. But I mean, I don't see Bitcoin adopting anybody's technology ever, at least at this rate.
I mean, the problem, right, is that The reason we decided to go, you know what, we need to do something different with governance because there's problems with Bitcoin, is because Bitcoin is, I mean, it's basically run by a duopoly at this point. You're either a proof of work miner and you have a huge capital expenditure on your hardware, and you may or may not be backed by the Chinese government, or you're a member of the Bitcoin Core Development Group, which is backed by a big pile of Silicon Valley or venture capital money. So basically, if you're not a member of one of those two groups, you have effectively zero sovereignty in the Bitcoin system. And I think that in the long term, that may prove unsustainable. But I mean, the way I saw this governance model that we ended up implementing with Decred is that because it involved changes to the incentive structure, it would be very hard, if not impossible, to convince people to implement it in the context of Bitcoin. Because, you know, you look at it now there's these two groups who are in charge of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Core and the proof of work miners. Neither of them want to give up the power they have. I mean, and if, you know, I haven't heard it expressed this way, but you know how there's this, user activated soft fork? That is basically a coup against the proof of work miners to say, you know what, we have these two ruling groups, and then one of them is going to use a cutout to basically say, you know what, let's just ignore the other group. And, you know, it's, you know, we got Turkey. And, you know, we may as well just put them in jail, right?
I have to really disagree with your characterization of the Bitcoin community.
That's a great opinion, and we'll never agree.
Yeah, the developers are not, like, I don't think it's fair to say they're centralized around a company in Silicon Valley. Like, Bitcoin Core is really a meritocracy, and the people who write the code have the influence in the Bitcoin Core community. And it's good ideas, like it's to the final cut, and it's code that doesn't have bugs in it, that gets through. So
what you're telling me is that less than 60% of the core developers are employed by a single organization who has received tens of millions of dollars of venture capital money in return for nothing?
So Blockstream was founded by people who were contributing to Bitcoin Core before it started. And yes, they funded. But if you look at the code they're writing, it's very clear that their ideology is for enhancing the properties of Bitcoin that most people want. They are talking about fungibility. They're talking about scaling in a way that keeps the network as small and as decentralized as possible.
So what system for obtaining that feedback do they use?
I guess a traditional system of like reputation and
it's a celebrutocracy, dude.
It still has to.
No, he's saying what system, you know, do they actually use to poll this Bitcoin community?
So
how do they actually represent the interests of holders of Bitcoin?
Yeah,
you know, other than just defining what these interests are themselves.
Yeah, so after they've written the code, it isn't deployed to the network until the people running the nodes on the network and the miners upgrade their software, right? There's no system of coercion to force people to upgrade. People upgrade their Bitcoin client because they see value in the upgrade.
It's a much more slower and stable process that,
Your guys' plan to just add so much complexity to the code base does not add value to its function as a currency.
I think it adds like more stability in terms of like how a hard fork is executed. Because right now, like doing a hard fork is a lot of risk associated with it, right? Like if we don't have more than.
And as soon as you have users in your community, a hard fork risk is there. And the more complex code, the more possibility of a hard fork.
Well, I mean, this is why in general, I don't even like to engage the Bitcoin community because it's so polarized. You can't have an opinion. If your opinion is not some junk that's been regurgitated on, you know, the Bitcoin subreddit or the BTC subreddit, it's like you're not allowed to have that opinion. And the way I see it is it's just a bunch of astroturfing. Neither group, neither the proof of work miners nor the core developers have any real sense of what the users want other than what they tell them they want. So the system is, in my opinion, broken, and that's why I developed Decred. You know, I'm not keen to have this argument because I'm very polarized. I think it's, you know, I'm not interested in participating in it anymore. It's horribly frustrating as somebody who is, if you're not in the Bitcoin core group, you have no say, and that sucks. So I'm done with that.
Taylor, would you say you're frustrated with the decision-making process that's happening right now with Bitcoin?
Yeah, I didn't understand the miners, and certainly it's slow. And like the reveal of how ASIC boost works really makes the miners seem a lot more rational, and rationality I can understand and deal
It's
with.
all profit incentive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously, yeah, they want profit. And I think like the main argument is not about which improvement is better. It's about the order of steps that they do. Because if SegWit gets implemented, we start building all these layer 2 services. Well, then it's really hard to convince people to say, yeah, we need to do a hard fork and add to get a second megabyte onto this block that we can now utilize better. So maybe they're like, well, let's at least get the second megabyte, and then we can build all the services in, because we're not going to be able to get that once we do SegWit. I think that's like the core of their argument, but they're not really even saying that in the argument. It's purely the order of operations rather than the actual execution. But there's the whole idea too that Unlimited is throwing a bunch of really garbage code, I think, out there too. Like I'm not even sure Ver really wants to run Unlimited. I think it's almost partly scare tactics too, but. There's more going on here than just improving the network. I think the altcoins have a big play in it too, with all these projects like Decred, like Zcash, like Dash. They're the Bitcoin 2.0s, and they all need to succeed as well. And if Bitcoin is too successful, or there's too much euphoria, then people forget about the altcoin space, and there needs to be that test bed. So it's very much ebbs and flows, and like. We can argue and talk about this all day, but we've kind of come to the end of our time here, guys. Any, I guess, final quick opinions on, Bitcoin and, types of network upgrades? No?
Well, I'll just say this really quick. As I said before, I love Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has a lot of advantages that can never be replicated by anything else. One of them being the first mover advantage. They have incredible brand recognition. I mean, no other project can ever, do what Bitcoin has done in that sense. But at the same time, you look way back in the day when these internet companies were emerging, and you could have said the same about AOL, maybe, for example. And I know Bitcoin maximalists hate this argument, and I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I just love Bitcoin. We all love Bitcoin. But what's to say, Bitcoin isn't AOL and Decred isn't Google, coming up on its tail. And, AOL thought that it was doing everything right, or Bitcoin's Blockbuster and Decred is Netflix. We're talking about the internet of money. And if you don't have the ability to evolve and you don't have the ability to move forward, somebody's going to eventually do it better than you. And people are going to get fed up with the way you're doing things, no matter how far ahead in the game you are, and they're going to use somebody else. And I don't think there's any argument against that point. And I think history repeats itself, and that's been proven time and time again. So I love Bitcoin. I hope to God, it doesn't fail, and I hope to God that we can learn to, in some way poll the community, get everybody's opinions and represent those opinions in a way that progresses and moves the Bitcoin project forward. But the reality of the situation is that, there is a problem there. And I think Decred provides a unique solution to that problem. And I think, we're about, on the cusp of seeing how effective that solution is. Time will tell.
And I use the Blockbuster and Netflix conversation all the time, but usually at traditional banks, it's like, this brick and mortar place is, asking me to rewind my videotapes. Why? And I'm, it's completely flawed. And we have competition in our space, and it's actually really healthy, because it reminds us that we have competition outside the space. And we're already kicking their ass, but we're too busy looking inward, oh man, we gotta be better than Zcash, we gotta be better than Bitcoin. We're all working together, and we're all not building a perfect system, but we're definitely building a better one. And that's just the necessity of competition, right? So we have the tradition on the show here where we predict the price of Bitcoin. I know a lot of people in the room here already got one prediction on the last show, but this is the chance to double down and really, price it right, everyone. So maybe we'll start with Jake, who I think you actually got the right guess the last time you were on the show. So good work that way.
I think that where the price is going depends so hugely on Bitfinex that if Bitfinex does not get a bank account sorted out and be able to resume US dollar and other sort of common fiat currency inbound and outbound wires, I mean, it could go back to 1,200, but I think that if we assume that it's not going anywhere, and how far out are we predicting? We're predicting end of next week.
Yeah, it'll be next week at this time. And you know what? Maybe I'll just add this to the guesses from the earlier show. So Jen, I'm sorry, you're stuck with the 6,669, which we all want you to win, but let's be reasonable.
I will say 1,750 because I don't think they're going to get their bank account sorted out soon enough.
Yeah, that's the only way you're getting out of there. Daniel, what do you think?
I'm going to say 1850 because I think that the fact that, you know, people have no reason to sell their Bitcoin on Bitfinex creates an incredibly bullish environment, and that environment is going to kind of act as a magnet for the other exchanges and pull them along with it.
I'm just hoping, you know, they have all the Bitcoins they say they have. Like, I see that might be still an issue even with the Chinese banks, but,
yeah,
you know, time will tell. Like, Taylor, we didn't get you before. What do you think?
Consolidate about where it is now. It's like $14.99.
$14.99. All right, and David.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's going to probably revert a bit to the mean here. It's getting a bit ahead of itself, so I'll say 1,500.
1,500. So you're going to go the same as Manuel, or you want to go over above?
1,501.
Okay. I'm going to
1501, Bob.
This is a really good spread. We got a good prediction market going here, and we'll see, you know, who is the winner. And I appreciate everyone, you know, sharing their input here on the Bitcoin price, Bitcoin development.
What do you win?
Yeah, what do we get?
World domination.
Whatever you guys contribute to the bet. Okay. Soon we'll be doing some sort of smart contract system. So like I'm working on a smart contract platform, and I think what we'll probably end up doing is have a fork of Gnosis or maybe Augur, but probably Gnosis. And we're gonna do price predictions. I'm probably going to load the contract with $5 for everyone's bet, so there's at least a little bit of liquidity, and then we'll go from there. We'll let the people on the YouTube chat, which we got up to I think about 30 viewers, so
wow.
Props to you guys. But you know, it's nothing compared to the Steam and BitShares community. So you gotta maybe have a proposal to build some sort of social network on top of Decred, and maybe you'll do a little better in the live views.
I'm sure it will. It is a little late for, you know, a lot of our users. A lot of the European users are asleep, and you know, the US users are headed that way.
Those are sounding like excuses. You know what? You got the Asian market, and you know, like maybe there's a lot of Decred users in Hawaii and New Zealand, and you can really get this.
I don't know. I think we need to see a map of the nodes. You know, if you want to propose something like that.
Yeah. I mean, something we were thinking about was starting a mission where we get young people and we send them to other countries, and then we have them only feed people if they agree to show up and watch this Decred show.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah.
The traditional missionary.
Yeah, it sounds like it's better than Heidi's travels.
Yeah.
That's what they did to me.
Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe I can get I'll put a proposal in to have you guys sponsor the show, and then we can get some more subscribers. We'll get some collaborations, and yeah, it will be really good. I could be like Amanda B. Johnson, and you know, I could be sponsored by the Decred Network
To the tune of $20,000 a month.
Well, I can't process that. Oh man, don't remind me. So yeah, this has been a great show. Everyone in the YouTube chat, thank you so much for tuning in. You know, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. The social networks are down there, you know, and thanks for tuning in. Jake, Daniel, you guys are one of a kind. Thank you so much for joining us. We love getting your opinions on the altcoin, the Decred, and the Bitcoin space. And,
yeah, thanks for having us, man. Yeah, I had a lot of fun as always. You know, you've always been a cool guy. I like your show a lot, so it's fun being on here.
Well, thank you, and yeah, Jake as well. You know,
yeah. As usual, it's a pleasure, guys. Nice to talk to everybody.
We appreciate you taking the tape off the webcam just for this one, you know, experience. You can go ahead.
It will be recovered in short order.
Yeah, break out the soldering iron and take it off again.
No, all you need is a pair of pliers, and you can pull them out usually. So.
Oh gosh.
No comment. Okay, everyone at home, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next 1,000 blocks.